So in conclusion, I put on my journalist hat to research and rebut Richard Gage's claims. I've given you 235 reasons why I believe they have no foundation. I counted out all those reasons to impress you with how many reasons there are, but also to make it easy for 9/11 researchers to respond and rebut point by point. It's my way, I guess, of trying to be supportive. So you'll be able to read 235 respectful rebuttals on the internet before long from 9/11 researchers, I can almost guarantee it. I want to thank all the people at Randy, RANDI.org, who contributed so generously of their time in explaining so much of this material to me. There are now more posts on the Gage's Next Debate thread than there are architects and engineers on Richard's petition. You can follow the whole long thread if you want to find hundreds of sources for what's on these rebuttal videos of mine. Several people actually talked about this as our rebuttal, which made me proud. And a lot of scientific and technical people gave me invaluable information for me to pass on to you. I also want to thank Richard Gage and the many 9/11 truth activists who gave me their time and answered my questions. Sometimes tempers flared, but never with Richard, and it's a challenge to follow Buddha's advice to assume good intent when you're dealing with somebody who completely disagrees with you. Richard and I did succeed in our mutual goal of creating camaraderie, even in the midst of disagreement for people, no matter what the issue. For those of you with a spiritual leaning, I hope you also get to know Eric Lawyer, founder of Firefighters for 9/11 Truth, perhaps visiting his new website, onetheevent.org. I've loved our emails and I'm happy we met. So now, you are the jury, and you're in a good position to decide whether the controlled demolition theory makes sense or not. If you've watched Richard Gage's Blueprint for Truth and my 20 short videos with 235 rebuttals, that may be enough for you to decide. Or you can do more independent research. By independent, I mean that after you race to the people on your side, check out the blogs and threads of what people are saying on the other side. And then even better, find some scientists and formulate some really good questions for them. People who are not a part of either the 9/11 truth movement or the 9/11 debunker movement. Ask a physicist how much force a falling object has when it goes into free fall for 13 feet, which is one story of the Twin Towers. Ask a metallurgist whether it's possible to correctly identify molten metal by sight. Figure out your own questions based on something either Richard or I said, and then ask yourself, is it true? And find out independently and get your confirmation of if it's true or not. The National Fire Protection Association and the International Code Council have both jumped onto NIST recommendations and redesigned their templates for building and fire codes. I'm glad that they did that. Those revisions, I believe, will save lives. The people I've talked to and the people I've read are forensic analysts, fire chiefs, structural engineers, MIT physics professors, safety experts, metallurgists, chemists, heavy equipment operators, foundry workers, controlled demolition experts, scientists who answered my technical questions on a physics chat room, and nationally recognized fire experts. I talked with 4 different NIST representatives, and NIST scientists personally answered some of my questions. Even the scientists who disagree with specific points on NIST generally say they got it about 99% right. I talked with 14 engineers and physics experts who've answered many of my questions personally. They're clearly not part of any government cover-up. What they say makes sense. Both the science and the scientists themselves from all around the world are overwhelmingly on the side of natural collapse. Every national structural engineering body in the world, including the American Society of Civil Engineers and Britain's Structural Engineering Institute, has accepted the technical findings of the 9/11 Commission and the FEMA and NIST reports. The multi-year Purdue study of 2009 and the Honolulu University studies also validated the major NIST findings. The Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat have offered only minor changes to the NIST report. Richard Gage has over 1,500 architects and engineers calling for an independent investigation. I've talked with many of them personally, and they've spent time explaining their position. I've spent hundreds of hours preparing clear explanations of why the reasons are that the scientists who don't believe in controlled demolition believe as they do. Most people would not go through what I've gone through. It's just too much effort to attempt to disprove all of this. But 235 reasons later, I'm pretty sure I'm right. One 9/11 truth researcher says that I'm on the wrong side of scientific history. After all, there were some badly distorted rumors about giant, aggressive, hairy, super big men in Africa. And some explorers went out and tried to find these guys. They were roundly ridiculed by their colleagues until one day, one of them captured a gorilla and brought it back to Great Britain. When they did that, well, maybe someday Richard Gage will drag a gorilla out of the mist too. If that happens, at least I will not have trashed my opponent. I even have a joke for you about people like me. How many 9/11 truth deniers does it take to screw in a light bulb? None. We're satisfied to just sit in the dark. I also have, just for journalistic balance, a joke for the truthers. How many truthers does it take to screw in a light bulb? That's not funny. Well, you'll notice it's the only time I've used the word truthers in this entire rebuttal series. I know the term has a derogatory connotation, and my friends do prefer the term 9/11 activists. So if I'm wrong and the 9/11 truth movement is right, I see two hopes for that possible discovery. Julian Assange of WikiLeaks doesn't believe in this theory, but if he got real good insider information proving it true, he, or maybe one of his competitors, would release it all in a New York Minute. Anyone can create a private blog. The cat is out of the bag, and government secrecy is now almost impossible. Even with the incredible ease with which uncensored information can be disseminated now, no one has come forth with inside 9/11 information. The other major hope is that Kevin Ryan, Niels Harrod, Stephen Jones, or someone in possession of the 9/11 dust will subject it to analysis from an independent lab. I hope it happens. Their failure to do this damages their scientific credibility in my mind. In the meantime, do you ever worry about the absolute absence of physical evidence of demolition triggers of any kind, the complexity and size of this operation, especially the absence of direct testimony from anyone who knew what was going on? I know that our country can do terrible things. I know that any country can do terrible things. But I also know that people can do great things in terrible circumstances. Back in Nazi Germany, you resisted the Nazis, you got shot. And yet, thousands and thousands of people risked everything to resist the Nazi regime. Here, a whistleblower gets fired, and then you take your case to court, to the media, to congressional hearings. The argument that no one would do the right thing if all these people were involved in this vast conspiracy exposes a belief in the complete evil of every single individual involved. It is to deny that there is even one shred of willingness anywhere in our species to sacrifice for something greater than ourselves. To say that not even one person out of hundreds or even tens of thousands with insider 9/11 information would do one brave deed is a statistical impossibility that can only be held onto by someone with an incredibly dark view of our species. Do any of the 235 rebuttals I've offered you in this video series make you think twice about this theory? If they're not enough to change your mind, what would satisfy you? What would convince you? Please think about that. In Richard's video, he explored the psychological resistance that people might feel toward his theory, and they tried to gently guide you into, quote, the nightmare of 9/11. I am inviting you to wake up from that nightmare, not as an excuse to go into avoidance, but as an opportunity to see what is true. So if you're a 9/11 activist, I hope you won't just say, well, okay, I was wrong, I'll just go home now. I invite you to make sure that your compassion, your love, your justice, your love of justice and peace, they're directed in a way that is in harmony with the truth. There's no lack of ways to give your heart and soul to making this world a better place, and there are no shortcuts to creating such a world. There's plenty of fear to go around on both sides of this issue, and that fear shows itself on both sides as mistrust, contempt, psychologizing the other side, rigidity of belief, refusal to look at information that doesn't support your views, calling the other side frauds or psyops or deluded or stupid or shut down or fearful, declaring that someone like me is so ignorant that I don't even know how ignorant that I am, as a way of blowing off my arguments, religious or political or even racial attacks, even direct verbal aggression. But not everyone on either side of the 9/11 issue responds to our country's great loss out of fear alone. Some are very idealistic and on a path of inner peace, social justice, and spiritual or psychological growth. You can't just make generalizations about us 9/11 truth deniers any more than you can make generalizations about 9/11 truth activists. There's only one thing about the 9/11 truth members movement that I think is pretty much universal. They all want to know the truth. So why did this happen? What does it mean for all of us? I feel a resonance with that desire for truth. And after all that was said and done, I had hoped that researching and laying out the opposing views of the controlled demolition theory would help us all come closer to the truth about this terrible event that touched us all so deeply. In the face of this, do we really get to the truth just by deciding who's right? I'm pretty sure I'm right. Richard Gage is even more sure that he's right. At least one of us is wrong. Maybe both of us. I can only say that my 235 reasons why I'm right don't touch the deepest truth or heal this national trauma. So I want to close with a heartfelt appeal. The Dalai Lama was asked who his greatest spiritual teacher is, and he said Mao Zedong, the man who destroyed Tibet. I yearn for peace inside and out. I work against war and inhumanity because the aftermath of these things break my heart. But I find that when I act against these things, anger and judgment and separation come up in me. I call for humility, respect, compassion as we look for the truth. In your investigations, I beg you first to do no harm. Wordsworth said, "He who feels contempt for any living thing hath faculties which he has never used." Mother Teresa said, "Where there is love, there is peace." Martin Luther King endured endless injustice, yet he was able to say, "Man must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality." Martin Luther King was inspired by Jesus, who said, "Love thy enemy." So maybe Richard's wrong, maybe I'm wrong, but my yearning for truth is not fulfilled on the debating stage. When I heard my teacher, Papaji, say, "Love all, no matter what, love all, it will win all battles," in that moment, I felt that I was kissed by truth. I think I'm right about 9/11, but if it's the truth that I want, that journey starts and ends here. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you for taking time to join me on this inquiry. It's a long and challenging one, and perhaps someday we'll meet in another field where the rights and wrongs of 9/11 are set aside. I hope we can see what shines brightest in each one of us and wish you the very best on your journey.